Chapter 29. Priya.
Thunder cracked in the night in that other world, the world of consciousness. She knew that the realm of her existence was there, but she couldn't break free of the image pervading her dream. Priya was Delphine again, but not Delphine at all. Another, an intruder, a second self who dwelled within. In her ward room at the end of the Chancellor's Hall, she sat in an oversized wooden chair with thick leather cushioning, her eyes set on the door. A hazy blue swirled in the periphery. Her facial muscles twisted. The door opened. Priya didn't know who was coming, but Delphine was expecting him. That half of her knew exactly what was happening, knew why her power seemed to be draining more and more by the second. When she set her gaze on the steaming teacup near the corner of the desk, Delphine knew what had come, but Priya had no idea. The new iteration of the one-time Chancellor knew, even in her slumber, that this was the point of the whole exercise. Someone wanted her to remember her past life, the person she once was, but she'd known since the dream ending with Came, the one where she'd sat with Prantu in the trunk of the massive tree in the dark wood. Her recollections were intended to serve a dark purpose. This is why she struggled against them, kept the details of the many dreams she and Jem hadn't shared from him. Now, in this dark slumber, she couldn't escape. Priya Sky wished with all her might she'd told him everything. When the door swung open, Delphine spoke to the hooded figure standing there. "Alas, you found the way to betray me." "Yes," the figure grumbled. "And when you return me to Jara, how do you think she'll respond?" "She will hold me responsible for it. All of it." "A fair price for your betrayal, Prantu, if not for the right reasons." "I served you willingly. You are the betrayer. Jara will see." "Will she? How can you be so sure? Know my mother better than I, do you?" She stared at the steaming cup again. "How long do I have?" "Seconds, not minutes. And I'll recall nothing before this day." "If the goddess finds my service in her interest, yes." "And when my master hunts you down?" "I have taken precautions. The Underlord will not find me until I want to be found, and the dark servant with whom you've partnered will have no better luck." "And how will you deal with the Ancient One? Another potion of lavation? Do you really think that will work? Assuming you can even venture into the depths without him eviscerating you?" The blur in Delphine's periphery crept toward the center. The room tilted on its axis, then righted again. Black dots flashed in her vision, as if she'd stood too fast, even though she sat. When Prantu didn't answer, she continued, but her words lacked the enunciation, as if they were spoken by another. "Will you dare venture into his lair?" Prantu stepped into the dark room. "I serve beside you with honor, my friend. Now let go, and I shall return you to the bosom of the matron." Delphine jumped out of her seat, and the back of her legs kicked the chair away, like Prantu's the first time they met. "This is how you serve? By betrayal?" The room tilted again. "You allow yourself to fall to the charms of the darkest being imaginable, outside the Dark Lord himself. All for a power you didn't understand. But he put a demon in you through the dark door you opened to your soul. I swore an oath to your mother, and today I fulfill it." "He'll come for you." Prantu shook his head. "He'll never find me." He raised his hands and a swirling ball of blackness spun on an axis around his head. Before her eyes, his black hair was washed in gold. His brown eyes merged to blue. His body stretched, grew taller. "You've learned my partner's trick, you conniving bastard. You're weaving mana." Prantu nodded. "What will my mother—" "Mother? What is her name? The blonde hair, the tree. What will she think of—" Delphine pressed her fingers to her forehead. When she raised her gaze upon the man whose name had slipped suddenly away, he frowned. She spied empathy in the expression, and rage washed over her. The blur of her vision darkened, then morphed to red. She raised her hands. They glowed, but then the light flickered out. The power gone, siphoned in an instant. By the light, I'll see you restored, Delphine, I swear it. What? Delphine asked. Restored? What do you mean? She peered long into the man's face. A familiarity pinged. Something about the curve of his narrow chin, but with each passing moment, it faded. Then it was gone. Who are you? What is... Then, darkness. Priya shot up in her bed. Click jumped down, spun in a circle, then peered up at her. Lightning flashed, and Priya peered up at the window. The shadow of a figure's head stood there, though she couldn't make out any features of its face, as the lightning behind was a quick shadow across them. But a speck of white caught her eyes. A bone earring. The male visitor. Gemini was right. Thunder caused her to wince, and she squeezed her eyes closed. When she blinked them open again, the figure was gone.
You have recovered a crucial memory. You have reached level 27. You have gained +2 intellect. You have gained +2 constitution. You have recovered a skill, mana weaving.
Priya shot out of bed and zipped to the door. Click and the wolf hustled over, then burst out into the dark morning as soon as she released the latch. The wolf growled, and Click did that for which she was named in rolling timpani when they turned the corner in front of the house. The two elves the queen lent Gemini stood with weapons drawn. The man with the bone earring's neck pinched at the working ends. Priya thrust out a finger. I had another dream. It was his doing. The man called Yildren grasped the intruder's collar and yanked him closer to the tip of his sword.
Then it seems the mythic was right, Lady Priya.
He shoved the caster against the wall of the row house.
Reveal yourself, demon. Who do you serve?
The man's lips quivered beneath wide eyes.
I'm no demon.
Priya stepped close, all too aware how scantily clad she was in her night clothes, but she didn't care. Tell me true. Did the three of you clear the blight, or did Cain recall his minions? The man pinched his lips together in response. That's as much an admission as any. Pulo came around the corner with Machini in tow. Bind him, find the other two, and see if they don't escape. Call the mage the queen sent. All must be silenced. She glared at the man who intruded into her dreams. If you see the hint of a casting bar, run him through.
Chapter 30. Gemini. Priya's message validated my suspicions. Destiny hung back with Roshan, her hands gripping both pommels so she was ready to guard the priestess when things inevitably turned. I added the latter to the private chat. When I nodded, Amelia dropped back, raised an arrow, and leveled it at the back of Prantu's head. Then I hustled up next to him. Did you think we wouldn't figure it out? Prantu's head swiveled around.
Pardon?
You heard me. I know about your little meeting, so it would be easier if you just came clean. The shocked expression stretching his features did little to allay my suspicions. I knew what I knew. Even if the finer details weren't in my grasp, I knew what I knew.
What is this foolishness, Gemini?
His tone wasn't convincing. I plowed on. That night in the Foundation, I spied you zipping around the instance. No one on my team could move like that. When everyone went back to sleep, you sat on the stairs and waited for me. You wanted to talk about Priya, about the possibility of lavation.
So? I'm concerned for an old friend.
Tell me, who gave your old friend the lavation potion all those years ago? Prantu scowled. His gaze darted from me to the Templars ahead, and back.
If you must know, it was me.
Why would you do something like that?
I've already told you. She fell.
She fell? Or maybe she dabbled in powerful magic she couldn't control and was possessed as a result.
Yes. What's the difference?
Let's try another tack. Giles told me when he showed up with Amelia and Brugge in Warrington, you were out on the street to meet them, that you knew they were coming.
So?
Where did you get that power?
I tire of your accusations.
That didn't sound like an answer. Giles told me he's never met a dark caster who couldn't do that. Of course, there's a far-seeing spell that anyone with shadow affinity can use. Priya and Giles both have it. But then you'd have to know where to look. So you saw them coming. Who else, have we heard, can find people with magic essences and high affinities at great distances?
You accuse one above your station,
Pronto growled. Oh, really? Because the Pronto I met in Warrington would tell you I was the second coming. A blessed member of a blessed pairing meant to bring light to the world. Yet your tone seems so pessimistic of late. At first I chalked it up to your age. I thought maybe you were at the end of your rope and were trying to eke out this last bit of business before you passed on to Solara. Then yesterday, you told me we had visitors. We walked outside and there they were. How did you know they were there?
You have no idea the lengths of my capabilities, boy.
But the final nail in the coffin was when you leaned on the counter in Pronto's shop. Last I was there, he explained to me that the crystals he kept encased in that glass held light power. So when he passed by, they glowed and the aura screwed with him. But I recalled the glow being dim. When you passed by them, they lit the dark room. The liar snarled.
You trifle with a power you can't comprehend.
His eyes glowed red. Now that I believe. I raised my swords in a V around his neck. Their tips clanked to the wall. I think your capabilities are boundless. That's why I'm prepared. I sliced my blades clean through and parted the imposter's head from his shoulders. Blood splatter flew everywhere, and a geyser erupted from the gash I opened. Then the head rolled to the floor. The head morphed, growing longer. The purple irises turned the same gray I'd noticed in the cave the day before. The body lengthened, and its shoulder broadened inside the robe. Yakol paced forward and wiped a streak of blood away from one temple. What was the real tipping point? How'd you figure it out? He shrouded his stats. Pronto hadn't done that. The High Priestess conveniently took him out of a fight where we almost blew it by shoving him into a bone shield. If this one serves came, she wanted to convert Priya before he could act against her. He also made tracks when Jara appeared on the battlefield. I imagine she would have seen right through his facade, but the instant she left, he reappeared behind Prince Tryon, without my seeing him approach. In hindsight, that helped me figure out the figure moving around the Foundation at such speed. But the real catch was when I remembered the discussion about Levation. Not about how he wanted me to feed Priya a potion to reset her, but after. Just as the sun carved this beautiful orange glow across the flat tops of the cliffs before us as it rose. He decided he needed to get a few hours' sleep. What does that mean? Yakol asked. Roshan covered her mouth and mumbled through it.
That he was a vampire.
I nodded without turning my gaze from Yakol. He wore coverings from head to toe, with a mask over his nose and mouth, and a hood hung low to shade his eyes, even though it was unseasonably warm at the Queen's Forest. But he didn't wear it at all at night. For instance, you might have noticed his thick-knuckled hands. It was a nice touch. Yakol gaped. I've never seen a vampire.
Not many have, Roshan said. When my master bestowed the title of priestess upon me, he invited men and a woman from far-off lands to rank up my attributes. He paid them with the gems he'd sent me to carve from a hidden mine, to teach me how to quiet my mind and commune with the goddess. One of the trainers was a vampire.
I took up the mantle, but it was my tank's words who put the idea in my mind. Me? The Cine asked. I nodded. Well, you and Giles calling him the Ancient One. Do you remember when we defeated the Grootslang in the Plague Baron's gates, and you received a new weapon? She nodded in that enthusiastic way she did. She was so pleased, she started pledging her loyalty to me. I brought up my log and read. Paraphrasing, she said no mist creature would slither before me and live. No Grootslang would survive to tell the tale of encountering me. No undead zombie would creep before me, and...
No vampire shall speak your name, the Cine finished.
I flashed her a smile.
You remembered every word.
I shook my head. No, I just remembered being taken by the idea of vampires in this world. I scrolled through my log to find your words. That's the beauty of an interface. I can log the things you say that I want to remember with a thought. Amelia chuckled.
Oh, I could see how that might cause problems.
So, Roshan said,
This was the figure running around the Foundation.
I nodded. Yes.
Does that mean the 3 visitors are his people?
Yes, I don't think they're Shadow Council at all. It was a ruse.
But if that isn't Prantu, where is Prantu?
I sighed. I'm pretty sure he's dead. Priya's message mentioned how the real Prantu fed her the lavation potion in her tea. He loved her enough to let her go, to see her potential wasn't wasted. Somehow I think this scrying bastard found him after we left. I couldn't say when, but before Giles showed up. I'm afraid it was us who tipped the bastard off, because he sensed Priya, me, or both when we entered Warrington the first time. We might have led him right to Prantu. Amelia's arrow remained level on the vampire's skull.
You have a way of attributing every death to your actions, Gemini Fowler. I believe we have discussed this. People make their own choices.
I nodded. They do, but it would have been nice to have Prantu around. That's all. Why are you still holding your bow like that? A voice spoke from behind me.
Because that's not how you kill a vampire.
I turned to find a replica of the corpse standing behind us. Chapter 31. Amelia loosed an arrow. 1 second the vampire's hands were at his side, the next he held an arrow in one, with his head pointed inches from his cheek.
Try that again, elf, and I will disintegrate you.
Lilia stepped tentatively toward us.
As this man's disguise has degraded,
Roshan said,
my sense of a dark presence has increased. I thought it was because we drew closer to our objective, but now I see.
The imposter shoved out with both hands, and a shockwave blew the entire party across the narrow hall. I slammed into the wall behind me. Roshan flew sideways down the corridor. I lost sight of Lilia and the Templars, but Destiny rolled to her feet at the end of her flight because, of course she did, Destiny was badass.
Finally,
Prantu yelled.
We can get down to business.
His irises were encircled in glowing red light, the rest of his eyeballs black. Reaching inside and behind his robe, he yanked out a half-staff and chanted in a language I didn't understand. Not wanting to know the end result when his casting bar filled, I clutched my katana and charged. Destiny was right on my tail, but as we approached, we slammed into an invisible barrier and were knocked backward onto our duffs. It was becoming commonplace, our ending up on our asses. Something cracked and pain tore through the bridge of my nose. My eyes watered, then warm blood oozed from my nostrils and over my lips. Lilia raised 2 fingers and waved them. A warm glow encompassed my face. I brought up my HUD.
Wahrsager Jakan, level 35, vampire. Vampires are creatures of the night who feed on the essences of living beings to refill spent dark mana pools. Vampires are the lone NPC classes in Enora Online who can bind others through the Devour Essence skill. If I'd had my way, you would have died in your instance. If any of you tried to harm me a second time, I will cast you into the underworld before you can blink and cast this dark plan off.
He waved a hand and a crunching sound filled the air behind me. I turned to find bricks separating in the wall to form a jagged doorway.
This is between us and the Shenhua. My master has grown tired of your impudence, and this conflict will be resolved today.
One thing you didn't take into account, asshole. You can't kill me. The vampire raised a hand and Baldric levitated, his boots kicking the air beneath them.
But what of this one?
The Templar's hand shot to his throat. He gagged, fighting for air.
What say you, mythic?
He spat the word as if it was poison on his lips.
Will you come and face your destiny, or shall I crack his spine?
I'll come. I sheathed my swords and showed him my empty hands.
The hell you will!
Yakol raged. Then his feet left the ground in the same fashion.
Another unbound companion. Shame.
I lowered my head in concession. I'll come, Master Jakan. Please set them down. The vampire cocked his head toward the door.
You first.
I threw Destiny a glance and signaled with a flat hand for her to stay put. On the other side of the door, a narrow hallway stretched about 50 yards before curving to the left. The vampire followed me in, then he lowered his hands. The sound of crunching plate armor relayed the Templars had been dropped. I checked my HUD to ensure they hadn't died in the process. The door slammed behind us. The vampire pointed down the hallway.
They're down there.
Who is down there?
Walk!
I obeyed for the time being. Didn't seem I had much choice.
Your party has engaged in combat.
So, you ambushed them even though I agreed to come with you.
I couldn't have them walking around my stronghold, now could I?
All I needed was to start the day with the death of the Templar chief and his beastmaster. Since the High Priestess seemed to have no love for Kame, I'm assuming you work for him.
I work for the governor of Nall on Kame's behalf.
Giles was right. So, you seek out magic users, or those with mana pools, and point the governor in the right direction so he can hunt them down. Then he trains them, puts them into the service of his king's favorites in Milbury, and, when they've served their purpose and leveled up just short of becoming dangerous, they're sent to Kame.
I'm impressed. Perhaps you aren't as stupid as you appear.
According to my combat log, the team was holding its own against a White and his plague bat minions. I had the utmost faith that Templars and Decini would call the right shots, so I focused on the here and now. I'm going to ignore the snipe because I just have to know. It's the governor you're taking me to, right? You all have some kind of plan about how to restrain me? To take me off the map?
Not if you'll serve. The Underlord has uses for you.
But you understand this changes things, right? He gave a long sigh, as if I were a belligerent child with whom he'd tired of debating.
How do you mean?
You're starting a holy war. I'm Solara's guy. The High Priestess and Holcrum broke the rules of engagement when they attacked the elves. That's why Jara attacked the High Priestess, and kicked her ass, I might add. By taking me, by trying to bring Priya back to Kame, you're pissing off the wrong entities. It's going to get ugly.
A decision to be made by the Dark Lord. I'm not one to question, but I will serve his needs.
Well, Priya's in the know, and your plot at my foundation has already failed.
When you are contained, we will deal with Delphine.
It's your funeral.
If you can figure out how to kill me, idiot.
He shoved me forward, urging me up the hall. I used his disinterest in further conversation by sending a clan chat to everyone we'd left behind in the hallways. The plan forming in my head was dicey at best, but it might just work. Chapter 32. The sprawling round room at the end of the tunnel had no business in what equated to a sewer beneath the university. When we stepped through the entryway, I spied a middle-aged man I'd never seen before sitting in a chair behind an unfinished table with beakers positioned haphazardly across its top. But the tall, elderly caster next to him was very familiar. Kermashian Pyre, the deathlock who'd burned my foundation. The man behind the table didn't rise. At last we meet, Gemini Fowler. I am Zane, governor of Nall. You're a cretin who enslaves people and sends young girls off to be raped by your king's benefactors. Pyre took a step forward, but the governor raised a hand. Beyond a bookshelf in the far corner behind him, I spied the aura of an azure glow. I locked my gaze on the governor's. I am the regent in this region, as my father and grandfather were before me. While I readily admit my upbringing has lent me to certain proclivities, I do not take liberties with young girls, and I only punish those who don't comply with the king's mandates. You mean your mandates? Have you ever met the king? No, I didn't think so. Giles told me all about you. How you punish those who can't meet the food quotas on their farms. How you raise individual quotas so they'll be forced to give up a daughter they can no longer feed. I know you're kind, so spare me your lies. The man who killed my family comes here and speaks to me this way? The governor rose. Perhaps I should let Pyre burn you to ashes.
I would happily comply, Your Excellency.
Or maybe I will let Wahrsager Jakan feed on you and keep you a slave here until the master calls for you. It doesn't make you feel like a peon to serve his every whim. We all make sacrifices, Fowler. This was the way long before I came along. We maintain balance. We enforce the king's edicts to quell the casting population. We serve Kame,
to maintain balance.
But you're not really here to serve him at all, are you? The governor's expression soured, then stretched. He shot a quick glance at the vampire over my shoulder, then at Pyre. The vampire stepped around me and repositioned himself on the side of the desk opposite Pyre.
I sense hesitancy, Your Honor. Is there something of which I should be made aware?
I'm afraid this isn't going as I'd planned. The governor stepped around the desk and sat on its corner. Gemini, I brought you here to make an offer. I clapped my hands. Ooh, I can hardly wait to hear it. The governor ignored my snark. Came is willing to let you serve. You would come to Millbury, be allowed to adventure to raise your level, and eventually lead a specialized regiment I am forming. Still not interested. Perhaps you should hear me out. I turned in a circle and raised my arms by my shoulder. Well, it doesn't seem I have anywhere to go, so sure, knock yourself out. The governor shook his head in a slow left-to-right swivel. Strange expressions. I never imagined the second coming of your kind would be so strange. Yes, as I was saying, I'm building a specialized regiment. What's more, I think the status quo of the last half-century is proving difficult, now that your kind has returned. So maybe you'll answer a question for me. I doubt it. Will more come? I laughed. Why? You worried we're going to overrun you? I have contingencies in place. Images of 1,000,000 players flooding Rubal alone filled my mind with glee. Trust me, you have no contingencies for what's coming, Zane. Pyre stretched out a long, crooked finger.
It's Governor Zane, ingrate.
It was Zane's turn to laugh. But this is Solara's chosen, Pyre. He serves the Queen of Light. Why would he tie himself to such worldly practices as calling a simple mortal by a title? Let's choose our fight, shall we?
Of course, Governor.
The slave bowed. So, my offer. Come serve with me, and I will show you how serious I am about change in Eastern Rubal. How will you do that? A slow smile crept across the governor's lips as his eyes fell on the vampire beside him. For his part, Jakan seemed to catch the expression's meaning at the last moment, which proved a moment too late. Pyre, the governor said. The deathlock flashed to the other side of the room, raised his hands, his casting bar filled, then his palms thrust forward. Pyre casts Lava Bomb. Critical hit. Wahrsager Jakan. Minus 723 HP. I dove away from the sudden explosion, rolled to the other side of the room, then slid my back against the wall as Pyre burst forward in a flash of motion entirely too fast for someone so wrinkled. Jakan screamed as fire engulfed his body and burned the clothes off his back. He was a human flame as he struggled to his feet and raised an arm to cast despite his howls of pain. Pyre raised his hand, a wooden stake clutched in his fist, but an invisible force slammed him against the back wall, and blood splattered. The simple weapon clattered to the floor. The deathlock raised a hand and popped a huge health potion, but the awe in his eyes revealed the truth. He'd missed his chance. The vampire smiled.
You've gravely underestimated me, Deathlock. One who wishes to live never attacks a vampire from the front. May the Dark One welcome you into his fiery embrace.
The form glowing in the corner launched from behind the bookshelf. The outline of the elven figure stepped through space, reappeared behind the vampire. Then his arms stabbed in blurry blows. I reached for both swords. The azure glow flashed from the vampire, to Pyre, back to the vampire. Dagger-shaped slits appeared out of nowhere in each man's chest as the azure blur, a nickname I had every intention of giving my elven friend from that day forth, burned his spirit ability with great result. By the time his skill timed out, a bloody mess spurted from each man's wounds, but my attention was drawn to one hole in particular, as it was still filled. A short wooden spear, no, a stake, protruded from the center of the vampire's chest. I glanced at the floor where it had rested after Pyre's failed attempt. He picked up the stake when he transitioned from one enemy to the other? Damn, Giles is mean. The vampire grasped the stake, then tumbled into a pile of ashes. Pyre stepped forward, his hands patting different wounds across his torso, as if he could staunch the bleeding one at a time to prolong his life. A trail of thick blood poured from his lips. Pyre raised a hand, a healing potion clutched there as he stumbled backward. I lunged, then sliced through his arm. His hand plopped to the ground where its fingers twitched. The potion rolled away. Giles and I filled him with holes.
You have defeated Kermashian Pyre. Plus 7,560 XP. 8,000 bonus XP for killing an enemy of higher level. Giles has earned 100 light points.
You've still got it, old man. Giles half bowed.
Thank you, Shenhua.
We turned our gazes on Zane. The governor showed us his palms.
We can still come to an arrangement.
Congratulations. You have gained 1,000 light points. Congratulations. You have reached the maximum light level. Solara revels in your service. Reward. You have learned a new skill. Evocation of the Shenhua. Call down a mighty hammer from the heavens and blast surrounding enemies with light power, stunning them. Type, agnostic spell. Damage, 35 to 50. Effect, stun. Duration, 7 seconds. Cooldown, 30 seconds. Congratulations. You have reached level 30. +1 dexterity. +1 constitution. You have 5 bonus attribute points to spend. You may now select the specialty class. Shogun. Your companion Giles has reached level 52. +2 dexterity. +2 constitution. Giles has 5 attribute points to spend. You may spend 5 attribute points on Giles.
Dude, I said, you weren't in my party. I bet that vampire XP was sick. Giles shrugged.
You will have plenty of opportunities to level up.
Perfect, the governor barked. We whipped around as if we'd forgotten the governor was there, but it was really just because we had no reason to fear him. My face scrunched up. What?
Anyone can see things are changing. When my soldiers reported the combat between the High Priestess and Jara back to me, the shift in tides was apparent. The fact you've managed to evade my grasp for so long proves I'm not in the position of power I once was.
Dude, are you seriously going to try to weasel your way out of this? You have no hope of returning to your life.
Except I have you, Gemini Fowler, a man worthy to lead a regiment into the underworld and remove Cain from his throne. I have resources to help you build your foundation to great heights so that you might create the finest weapons of war and train your companions. The days of Cain's rule near an end. I'm merely following the trend to its natural conclusion.
And if I tell you to pound sand?
Let's not be so hasty, Gemini. When Pyre told me about what you did to save your priestess from him, that you unleashed an entropy crystal and brought Cain's minions and a field of blight to create a barrier of protection outside your foundation, I knew you weren't some zealous creature of the light. Like me, you're an adaptive man, willing to change tacks to protect those he cares about. Consider it. As I am Cain's loyal servant, do you think my people couldn't have marched across the blight and taken you at will? He barked a singular laugh. Of course we could have. But your actions gave me pause. I saw in you an opportunity, a chance for a partnership, that would remove the Underlord from the equation so that we might reform this part of the continent, and we might make the lives of the people better.
There's just one problem with your plan. The governor's forehead wrinkled up, then he gazed down at Pyre's corpse.
What might that be?
When I came to this world, I was given one piece of advice about how to survive. 2 simple words made the most difference in my ability to survive here. And while I could apply those words to you and we could probably win together, I don't think it's what my advisor had in mind.
What words were those?
Make friends. And that's exactly what I did.
And you think your friends can stand against Cain by themselves?
Oh, that's already as good as done.
How is that?
Because you've never raised a weapon yourself. You're a regent. You sit among your fineries, pass judgment, and rule people like Pyre, who only serve you because they don't want to end up being mana feed for your master. You have no combat levels to protect yourself, so you surround yourself with people like him. But that can't save you from people like us. It was Giles' turn. For the century of atrocities your family has bestowed upon others, I judge you in the name of Solara. For your attack upon and the murder of my people, I judge you in the name of my mother, Queen Renard. And for the countless many young people who've suffered the whims of you and your rich patrons, I judge you in the name of your own king. He turned to me. The honor is yours, Gemini. I shook my head. The hell it is. You hid out for how many years because of this bastard? Away from your family? Your tribe? No, Giles. This one belongs to you. But you serve Solara. It's only appropriate. I shook my head. Nope. Wouldn't be right. Just can't. Are the two of you seriously arguing about who is going to kill me? Zane asked. I turned and grinned. Yes, motherfucker. Because I want you to experience what it was like when one of your henchmen raised an axe in judgment, or when one of your rich friends prepared to rape a teenage girl. That moment before the nightmare. Now you know how that feels. I removed a dagger for the purpose. Then I winked at Giles. 1, 2... Congratulations, Gemini. Thanks, Giles. Same to you. 52, huh? I scanned the room. By the way, they seem to have closed the door behind us. Did you see another way out? Giles nodded and pulled the bookcase away. It swung on hinges, revealing a doorway. Great. I scanned my interface. Looks like the fight is over. I'll get Liatra to open a portal to the chapel for the rest of the team. Then we'll regroup there. Giles paced over the ashes. He set his hand on his narrow hips and stared. He clicked his tongue. A vampire. Unbelievable. At least he's a dead vampire. Yes, the elf said contemplatively. That's how I prefer them.